The Lord is good. Woo! His mercy is everlasting, and his truth endures to all generations. You may be seated in the presence of the Lord. Man, didn't God meet us in this place today? Hallelujah. I am so honored. And I said this on last night, and I really do pray you hear my heart and that you don't believe that I am trying in any way to be shady, throw digs, or anything of the sort. I'm at a place in my life and my ministry where I'm moving. And I'm in a fathering phase in this season in my life because I don't know how much time I have and I can't waste it. And so I'm dropping and I'm releasing and I'm receiving and I'm moving with a cloud. And I have to be in the right place. I have to be in the right moment, and I can't be distracted from that. And many times the enemy will try and use distractions to get you from that particular place. And you've got to be sensitive enough to know when you're in a moment. And with that particular moment, you have to understand that it's always going to be connected to placement because the moment won't be able to fully manifest and mature if you're not in the right place. And do you know the enemy will do his very best, Elder Allen, to distract you, to get you out of place because he don't want you to be in the moment. And you can literally be in a moment, but be out of place and not be able to receive what the moment had intended to bring you. Which is why I tell people all the time, the very time when the enemy does not want you to show up on time, don't want you to show up, period, is the time most times when God's trying to give you something new, when there is a move, when there is a training day, when there's something that needs to be deposited, and your very absence can bring your detriment because you don't know what you were going to receive that day that was intended to prepare you for a day to come. And when you miss the day where the download was connected to the moment and the place, you get in that new successive moment and you don't have the wherewithal to handle it because you missed that particular download or training day. Does that make sense? And so, with that being said, God told me to bring you right back to that familiar book that we've been launched in for the last 3 weeks. And it's interesting, guys, because we have been in First Kings, and God has been giving me different revelation from First Kings. It has not been my intent. In fact, you guys know we were talking about blocks. We were talking about money blocks. We were talking about identity blocks. We were talking about relationship blocks. We were talking about spiritual blocks because we were talking about a mind shift. You remember that? You don't remember that? Y'all remember we talking about a mind shift? Am I the only one that remembers it? Are we on the same page now? But if you think about it, God shifted me and he took me to the book of First Kings 3 weeks ago, and I began to talk to you about navigating from now into next. You remember that? And how Elijah was by the brook, and he felt himself leaving where he was now because God was pulling him to where he was calling him next. Remember that? And then we came back on last week and we talked about these successive moments in Elijah's ministry, from the brook to the barrel, to the raising of the boy, to the defying of the prophets of Baal, to him sitting under the juniper tree feeling like he's in a barren place. Remember that? But then him then taking a bold new step to go do the thing God had called him to do, which was to anoint Elisha, in the son of Shaphat, who was in the valley of Abel Mahola, to be prophet in his room. Remember that? And we showed you how Elisha was standing behind 12 oxen. And we showed you that God prophetically gave us a picture of our next transition, because our next transition was going to require the anointing of the ox. You remember that? Well, Tony, interestingly enough, he told me to retrogressively go back to the book of 1 Kings chapter 17 because he had something else he wanted to say to us. And so I call your attention to that book again. 1 Kings chapter 17. Man, when he showed me the stuff he showed me, I just got so excited because I can always tell when I'm tapping into something that's going to help somebody who's in rather a particular state or a particular place, and you've been trying to find your way and you didn't really know how to comprehend it. God always sends these gems to help you figure out what's going on with you at the moment in which you're in. 1 Kings chapter 17, again, is what I'd like to call your attention to. And I'm probably going to begin reading, let's say somewhere around the 4th verse. Do you have 1 Kings 17, verse 4? And it shall be that thou shalt drink of the brook, and I have commanded the ravens to feed thee. Where? Say there. Okay. Now, I want you to look at the 8th verse. And the word of the Lord came unto him, saying, arise and get thee to Zarephath, which belongeth to Zidon, and do what? Do you see that? Dwell there. Behold, I have commanded a widow woman to sustain thee. Now, I want you to go to the 10th verse. So he arose and went to Zarephath, and behold, when he came to the gate of the city, behold, there was a widow woman there. Do you see this? Do you see the redundant mentioning of this seemingly, Sharman, insignificant adverb? There. Now, what's interesting about the redundant mentioning of it, according to a principle in hermeneutics, which is the study and the methodologies of interpretation, biblical hermeneutics is the study and the methodology and the principles of biblical interpretation. And there is a principle called the principle of frequent mention, which says when a particular word, phrase, or thought is mentioned redundantly, it's pointing towards the meaning or a message that's supposed to be extracted from the text. Does that make sense? It simply means he's saying it over and over again because he's trying to say something to you. You got it? And so this frequent mention of this word there is important because he wants you to see that he really did tell him to go one place, and it was there that he blessed him. But then he told him to go another place, and it was there that he blessed him, which signifies, Pauline, that sometimes you can be here and it can be your there. But sometimes here is no longer your there. So when he tells you to go there and there becomes here, you can't get stuck here because here ain't always there. Does that make sense? Now, what's really interesting, Ricky, is there is a slim difference between these two adverbs, here and there. It's one letter, actually, T. And not UT. It's one letter, T. And they literally, Sister Deal, mean the same thing, placement, positioning. The only difference is the moment determines which is what. And you got to be sensitive in this season to know when here is no longer there. Because you can't be sustained here. You'll only be sustained there. And when here is not there, you've got to move. Does that make sense? Now, I'm not giving you the permission to leave your church, leave your family, leave your job, leave your city. But what I am telling you is sometimes you may have to stop doing what you've been doing, what you've been comfortable doing, what you've learned how to do with ease. And you may have to accept the challenge to do something else that will only come when you find out what there is. Now, I know some of y'all got ahead of me and you thought I was going to talk about there. But here's what I want to talk about. Write this down. The law of placement. The law of placement. There's a principle known as, please write this down, the principle of order, and it's sometimes called the principle of organization. Again, the principle of order or the principle of organization. Now, the principle of order or organization refers to a systematic arrangement of elements within a particular structure. Again, a systematic arrangement of elements within a particular structure to achieve, write these three things down: functionality, efficiency, and harmony. Again, it refers to an arrangement, a systematic arrangement of things that allows it to function, to do it with ease, and to work in sync with other things. That's functionality, that's efficiency, and that's harm. Anytime you find something that's not functioning properly, it's out of place. Anytime you find someone doing something and you can't do it efficiently with sweatless victory, Kimberly Clark, it's out of place. And it does not mean, Sierra, that you're not doing what you're called to do. You just may not be doing it in the right moment, the right place, and the right way. Because when you are operating according to divine placement, there should be no adversaries. There should be no rivals. There should be nothing. Bishop, you said I have no problem. No, I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is your problems can't have you. Because when I'm in my place, there is a grace that's on me for the place. Now, I want you to get this, write this down like this, Dr. Pam. When I'm in the right place, I have a special grace. But I've got to be careful to discern it in real time, because if I don't, Tamika, I'll miss the space to do it in. See, anytime I have a grace, I have a place. But the problem with that, Ashley, see, is I'm moving and I'm growing, I'm maturing, and I'm going through a stage of transformation and transition and metamorphosis at all times. So, Sharman, what that also means is I've got a space to do something in. And if, Pastor Baines, I don't discern the space, then I won't be able to be in the right place, and I won't have the grace. Did that make sense to anybody? Let me prove it by the text. See, Elijah was called to be in a particular place. Because he was in that particular place, he received the grace from the raven. But he had to stay there just for a limited space. That's why the brook dried up. And remember, I told you that theologically speaking, according to how God had done things, the brook could not have dried up because there was no rain in the land. Because the brook showed up with no rain in the land. So if it showed up with no rain in the land, it couldn't dry up because of no rain in the land. I told you it dried up because he didn't get up. And sometimes when you try to elongate your space, God will dry it up. Because he does not want you operating in a place without a grace. Man, let me help you with this. Because when you operate in a place without a grace, you got to bump your head. You got to have less than you need to make ends meet. You got to rob Peter to pay Paul. You got to constantly figure out how things are going to happen. You're always perturbed. You always feel with anxiety and angst because you're not in grace. And you're not in grace because you're not in place. I remember, anybody remember Stephanie Dotson? That was my god sister. We grew up together. I mean, literally like brothers and sisters, sleeping in each other's house, all this stuff. And so I remember sitting on a porch. Her daddy was a pastor, Leslie Dotson. And they called me Gene growing up. And my street name was Mo, but the family called me by my middle name. Yeah. Anyway, he said, Gene, boy, let me tell you something. Ain't nothing in your life gonna go right until you start running from God. Boy, he made me so mad saying that to me. But Evelyn, Pastor Clark, I call her Evelyn behind the closed doors. Pastor Clark, the moment I said yes to God, Elder Phoenix, my whole life changed. And it was not necessarily because I was too stubborn to say yes before. But Sister Dio, what happened now, Natalie, is that once I said yes, I got in place. And then, Caitlin, the grace came. And then stuff started to happen. I remember the second phase of my ministry. We had just started Temple of Deliverance then. And I remember calling Clark and calling, who was our chairman then, Clark? Was it Deacon Montgomery? Deacon Montgomery, I think it was our chairman. Called him and Deacon Johnson and met with them, told them, Pastor Johnson, what God was saying to me, because God told me to go full-time ministry with a church that was only a couple of months old. And I remember it was the most terrible thing God could ever say to a man like me, because I was used to working 3 jobs and pastoring. He said, quit and go do full-time ministry with a church who can't pay you nothing. Do you hear this? Okay, here is what I did, Sierra. I said, devil, I bind you in the name of Jesus. Watch what happened, Tony. At that time, I was driving for DHL. Every year, I got perfect driving records. I got awards. I would get bonuses because I had a clean driving record. He said, I want you to go in there and turn your 2 weeks notice in. The devil, you a lie. I got a ticket that day. Next day, he said, turn your 2 weeks notice in. Devil, you a lie. I got a ticket, Kenny, a second day. Next day, 3 days consecutive, turn your notice in. I got a ticket the third day. 3 tickets, they got to fire you anyway. He said, see, I was trying to let you get up before I had to dry it up. Did you hear what I just said? And the moment I stepped into full-time ministry, and this is now 26 years later, I started living better than I've ever lived before. Y'all ain't hearing me. I went from not having enough to having more than enough. I went from not being able to take care of me and my family to taking care of other people. Are y'all hearing what I'm saying? Because I got in my place. And then there became a grace for that particular space. Am I helping anybody? So then functionality, efficiency, and harmony will always be the end result of being in the right place. Now, I want you to get this. Please write this down, because when you are not in the right place, it means you can't work your purpose. I know there are many people in here trying to find out what your purpose is. I've told you this time and time again, and I think it bears repeating. Write this down. Myron Golden said this. He said, your purpose will be found at the intersection of your passion and your proclivities. Now, for passion, I want you to write this down very quickly. Passions represent the things that excite you. What gets you excited? What makes you have a burden? Many times, that's going to be your purpose. The very thing you get joy about, the thing you do for free and they don't even have to pay you. That's your passion. I preached harder for nothing than I have for money, because this is my passion. I was talking to a pastor on yesterday, and he asked me, I think I said this on a prayer call too, prayer Zoom last night. He asked me, he said, man, no, he didn't say man, it was one of my sons. Anyway. He said, I want to know when you study, because I do this every day and do this. When do you study? How do you have time to study? I said, I study every day. He said, huh? I said, every idle moment I get, I study. Now, I'm going to say something that's going to seem like extreme, but it's extreme, but I got to tell you, when I go to the bathroom, I study. That's idle time. Y'all ain't talking. When I'm at the red light, I pull out my phone. When I'm in the gym on the elliptical, I'm studying. When I come in here sometimes sitting in prayer soaking, I'm studying. When I go to my office, I'm studying. I literally take time every moment I get that's free to put something within me. And you know why? Because if God's going to trust me with a place and give me a grace, the least I can do is perfect it. So watch this, Nels Jenkins. If my grace makes me effective because I'm in the right place, What if I then added to it and sought out ways to improve it, how much greater I could be? Why would you want to be something and do something if you're not in the top percentile? Why do you want to be mediocre? Why do you want to settle for average? Do you know what average means? On top of the bottom. Why would you want to do that when all you got to do is apply yourself on a daily basis and be able to excel to go to the next level? But then your proclivities refers to your natural tendencies, your talents, and your predispositions. I've never known this about myself until the latter years. I told you I know what my passion is because I'm passionate about teaching people and enriching people and helping people, and I do that for free. But I've never known until my latter years that I've always been doing this sort of thing because I've always tried to take people's burdens. I've always tried to take their problems. I've always tried to be a fixer, and those are my proclivities. Some of you have inclinations, some of you have tendencies, things that you do on a regular basis, and you don't know that's your purpose. Now, once you discover your purpose, that's a good thing, but let's talk about it for a moment. It's something entirely different to discover my placement, because I can be in purpose but be out of place and never be productive the way God wants me to be. It's a burdensome thing to literally know what you're supposed to do, but not know where you're supposed to do it, or not know when you're supposed to do it. And timing can be of the essence. Space and geography can be very important as it relates to placement. Now, I want you to get this, because finding your placement in the world, matter of fact, write this down. Write this down. Finding your placement in the world is not about fitting into a spot where you've been told to stand. If you thought that was good, wait till the B clause. Finding your placement in the world is not about fitting in a spot, within a spot where you've been told to stand. Elder Allen, finding your placement in the world is about standing in the spot where you've been told you fit. I need to say it again. Show up and say, yeah. Finding your placement in the world is not about fitting in a spot where you've been told to stand. And in other words, some people will put you in positions because they think that fits you. Can we talk a minute? In the church, I've been guilty of this as a pastor, because if you teach for a living, I think you want to teach the children. I mean, you cook at the restaurant. Why don't you be on the hospitality? But what we don't understand is some people are not in their purpose. They just work a job. And they don't want to come to church and elongate the work because it ain't their purpose. Am I helping anybody? And I had to learn that. And so, Tony, I got to say it one more time. Finding your placement, Caitlin, isn't about fitting in a spot where you've been told to stand. I had to learn that about Caitlin. Caitlin had a whole tutoring business. So I said, you come tutor the children. She said, no, bro, that's work. So I thought it was an anointing. I didn't know she'd been trying to quit her job for 3 years. That's the inside real joke right there. So again, actually get this. It's not about finding your placement in the world and fitting into a spot where you've been told to stand. Now y'all ready for the last part. It's about standing in a spot where you've been told that you fit. It's about where God has uniquely designed you to be. And sometimes, Christian, being in that place will not be the place other folk agree with you being in. Because people want you where they want you. And you've got to learn how to affirmatively tell them no and then tell God yes. It can be the most scariest thing ever, but remember this. You write this down, as a matter of fact. You will know your place, because standing there isn't something you can do independently. It's something you've got to do codependently, which means you will know your place because you can't stand there without God. You will know what you've been called to do because it's going to be too big for you to do it by yourself. I say it all the time. Anything you can do without God didn't come from God. Now, the second thing this suggests, Dr. Pam, is that true placement is not about conforming to expectations. It's about superseding your limitations. Again, it's not about conforming to expectations. It's about superseding your limitations. Now, there are about 5 things I need you to get because you'll know when you're navigating into a new place. Number 1, it's going to be too big for you. It's going to be something you can't do. It's going to be something that's intimidating. And here is what I've been telling people. And there is, as a matter of fact, let me give you a term real quickly, and I want to be able to spell it out properly for you, so you can really get it. Okay. Because this is what many people are suffering from. And God said I had to expose this. I want you to write this word down: neuroplasticity. NeuroPlasticity. C-I-T-Y. Do I need to spell it again? Neuroplasticity. Now, neuroplasticity deals with the fact that you ignorantly and unconsciously train your psyche by your negative words. It means that anything I can do with ease, let's say you go in the gym, or let's say you drive a car, or let's say you go to work and get on your keyboard and start typing. Let's say you put a lesson plan together. Whatever you do, let's say you're in the medical field. Whatever you can do without thinking, play the keys, Alan, do hair. Whatever you can do without thinking has been committed to your subconscious. That's why I don't have to think about it, because subconsciously, you can drive mindlessly home with your mind on some stuff, and you look up, you at home, and you don't know how you got there. Am I talking to anybody? Because you're driving according to memory and muscle memory, but you're driving according to what's been submitted and committed to your subconscious. So then, as it relates to believers, anytime we are challenged in our faith and we believe we can't do something, it's because, Felicia, our conscious realm has come in. And now the conscious realm is looking at what's happening in the present, while the subconscious realm says, we can do this, Kenny, because we've tackled it in the past. Am I making sense yet? But when I start speaking negatively, according to what I'm looking at consciously, I'm training my subconscious to believe that what I used to think is no longer relevant. That's why I tell folk all the time, you got to stop saying stuff like, I won't do this. I cannot do this. I'm tired of this. I don't want to do this. If this keep happening, I'm going to do this. You are training your psyche and your subconscious to believe that stuff. Am I helping anybody? And so when we come to a place of placement, write this down, we got to watch our words. Because you got to start speaking statements of affirmation that speaks what you can do, instead of operating in word curses that says what you will not do. Because when you're in your place, you receive, number 1, a supernatural grace. Number 2, you receive supernatural strength. Number 3, you receive supernatural stability. Number 4, you receive supernatural sagacity. And number 5, you receive supernatural skill set. Let's go ahead and break each one of them down. Your supernatural grace is going to be the divine ability to function at an optimum level that you wouldn't be able to function on even if you had gone to school, because it's something supernatural God puts on you and in you. Does that make sense? Has nothing to do with what degree's behind your name. Has nothing to do with who you know. Has nothing to do with what you've experienced. Come here, Joseph. They saw this boy wearing a coat of many colors. They said, you know what? If we can get that coat off him, he's going to lose his favor. But what they didn't know is it wasn't about what was on him. It was about what was in him. And the reason you're excelling is not because you went and got another degree and went to school. It's because you got a supernatural grace that gives you sweatless victory and do things with divine ease. But then supernatural strength, which means your capacity level increases. And the stuff you thought you couldn't take, you find yourself on the other side of it. But then supernatural stability. Because where you found yourself constantly transitioning and being unstable and ultimately finding yourself moving and always doing something new, now you're planted and you're grounded. Because you are sensing that you have been called to be here and do this. Am I helping anybody yet? But then a supernatural sagacity. This is wisdom for the moment. Wisdom, the Greek word is Sophia. And the basic way for me to make you understand wisdom is to say it like this. It's the ability to distinguish or to know difference. Wisdom says, I know what to do and I know what not to do. You got that? But then supernatural skill set. It means I perform on a high level of intelligence and intellectualism that I don't even understand. That only comes upon me, Pastor Clark, when I'm doing something. Did you hear that, Sierra? I don't even have access to it when I'm idle. But when I put my hands to do something, I do it at a level that makes scholars wonder how I got it done. Because I'm in my place. Now I want you to write this down about the biblical law of placement, okay? The biblical law of placement is God's order of positioning people and places to bring about his purpose and his divine plan. Again, God's order for people to bring about his purpose and divine plan. Your God is so bad that he's always been about putting stuff in order, giving it a purpose, and letting it operate according to his divine plan. Let me prove it to you. Go to Genesis 1:1. Let me prove it to you. There was a 19th century philosopher by the name of Herbert Spencer. Go look him up when you get a chance. He was well known for integrating philosophy and science. It's almost akin to allegories. You ever heard of allegorical teaching? Allegorical teaching was a fusion of theology and philosophy, which is something that your Plato's and your Aristotle's and such highly promoted because they infuse the smarts of philosophy into theology, and they started using pictures and types and symbols and saying God's word had a brighter and a bigger meaning. Does that make sense? You on the same page so far? Well, Herbert Spencer did the same thing, but he tried to use philosophy and integrate it within science, and he did it to prove the Bible to be wrong. Write these things down. There are 5 things that Herbert Spencer said that are knowable categories within natural science that debunks the Bible. Because he says there are 5 things that there must be in order to prove that there is something called creation. Because you know we're creationists, right? You know we're not Darwinians. You know that, right? Okay, come on. Darwin believes that we evolved from monkeys. You know we don't believe in evolution, right? Okay, y'all too quiet. Okay. You know the earth is not 4.5 billion years old. The earth is 6,000 years old. Because we're creationists. We believe it started in the garden 6,000 years ago. Now, come on now, I need greater assurance than this. We believe dinosaurs did roam the earth, but they didn't roam the earth billions of years ago. Okay? We don't have a complete timeline of when that happened, but it did happen It did happen somewhere between Genesis 1 and 2. Can I prove it to you? Okay, watch this. In the beginning, God created heaven and what? Go to verse 2. And the earth was what? And what? And darkness what? Deep water. So in between verse 1 and 2 is where the first flood took place. You got it? The antediluvian period. Stay with me. Go down to verse 10. I can prove that. Because in the beginning, God created heaven and what? And he called the earth what? So in the beginning, Tony, God created heaven and the dry land. So why did verse 2 have water? Because that was where the first flood took place. And some folks say that was where Satan was kicked out of heaven with the third of the angels. And God regenerated the earth. Yeah. Go to verse 28. It's going to make sense. That's why he blessed them, said, be fruitful, multiply, and do what to the earth? Do you know the suffix re mean do it again? Why would he tell the first people to do it again if wasn't nobody here? Okay. Go back Genesis 1 and 1. Y'all messing with you. Go back Genesis 1 and 1. So, Ricky, he said there are 5 knowable categories that he can speak of and debunk the creationist theory and even the fact that we come from some mystic being in the sky we call God. Write these 5 things down. And you're going to shout on how bad your God is. He says there has to be time. Christian, he says there has to be force. He says there has to be motion. Sounds like a physicist, doesn't it? There has to be space. Some of y'all already know what the last one is. There has to be matter. And they said, Natalie, you can't prove none of that with this whole creation theory. But God said, I'm going to use the first verse in the Bible to show you how bad I am. He said, you need time. He said, in the beginning. He said, you need force, God. You need motion, created. You need space, the heaven. You need matter, the earth. That's how bad your God is. Man, y'all ought to shout on that for real, man. So Herbert Spencer tried to say there was no order of positioning things. But we understand that the biblical law of placement said there has to be an order and a purpose to everything. Because this principle now, Pastor Baines, is underscoring the belief in God's sovereign intentionality about putting individuals in positions and specific places, which means you are not doing what you're doing where you are, have what you have by accident. It's all about placement and it's all about timing. Please write this down. When he told me, I almost shouted. He said, whenever someone is in their proper place, their inner genius emerges. But whenever they're out of place, they operate at the lowest level of deformity. Did you hear that? Whenever someone is in their proper place, their inner genius emerges, which means you seem smarter than what you are. Folk wonder, man, how you know that? You don't even know how you know it. You just in place. And Deacon Madison, you got to be careful, man, when you look at people and you marvel at them and sometimes try to mimic them and you don't know they're in their grace and in their place. Because when you're in your grace and place, you make hard stuff look easy. But then you'll be trying to add water and stir, and you're going to mess your whole life up trying to do what I do, and I don't even know how I do it. I just know it's something on me to get it done. Am I making sense? Now, let me give you some illustrations. So I believe it'll come home now. Have you ever seen a fish that you take out of the ocean, the creek, the tributary, the lake, the brook, whatever, put it in a bucket of water? It just, every now and then, it just moves. You ever seen them? Just move. Let's take them out of there and put them, April, them good fish you be giving me. Put them before you clean them and cut the head off for me. Put them right there, just like that, Caitlin. They seem as retarded as ever. But put that thing in that water. Their genius emerges and they just start moving swiftly. And there is no human that can swim like them, because when they're in their natural habitat, genius arrives. Can I help somebody and tell you, you will know when you're in your place, because things just start happening effortlessly, and you just start writing and you just start thinking and you just start speaking because I'm in place. Kimberly Clark, can you testify and say, you never knew you had all this in you like that until you got in that place? Man, when you get in the place, stuff starts happening to you. Let's talk about birds in the air. You put a bird on the ground, he just moves, hops. I mean, and just goes back and forth. But put that joke in the air. He soars in a way that a kite can't even mimic. We don't have to go there. Squirrels. Some of y'all squirrely like a squirrel. You ever seen it? You ever drove on the road and just watched the squirrel? That joker changed his mind by 7. He go. Sometimes I just stop and but put him in a tree. And watch how he just effortlessly runs up a tree as if he has suctions under his talons that can literally cause him to climb with ease. Let's take a cactus. A cactus is the prickly plant that seems very insignificant, has no purpose whatsoever, and it literally grows. If you ever go to the desert, and I've been to the desert in Arizona, I've been to the desert in Vegas, I've been to the desert in the Palms, and it's really something to see. They use artificial grass to have manicured lawns, like we have natural manicured lawns here. But they have cactuses, and they just grow wild. And these cactuses seemingly have no particular placement or no purpose. But if you take that same cactus and brought it to a climate like Shreveport, where it rains all the time, it would kill it. Huh? It's dry. You would think it wants water. Well, what you don't know about the cactus is it holds water on the inside of it. So whenever you cut the cactus open, water comes out of it because it's self-sufficient. And the reason it holds water is because it balances the ecosystem, because all of the desert insects and the desert creatures will eat from the cactus. And if a human ever wandered off and didn't have proper libation, they could go and find a cactus, open it up, sip from it, and be sustained and not die. But it can't do none of that if it ain't in the right place. You thought I was talking about a cactus. I'm talking about you. When you're in the right place, people can feed off of you. People can be edified by you. People can be built up from you. But when you're in the wrong place, not only will you die, but nobody can live because you are not living. Am I helping anybody? So write this down. Holy Ghost told me to tell you, sometimes you can be out of place so long that you become adaptive and you think you're being augmented. We're going to talk about that. You can be out of place so long until you become adaptive and you think you're being augmented. Let's talk about this for a minute, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to prove my point. Do you know you are adaptive creatures by nature? Biologically, you were made with an inner gene of adaptation. Brothers, can I talk to y'all for a minute? Do anybody know who Genghis Khan is? Y'all know Genghis Khan? That imperial ruler from thousands and thousands of years ago? Y'all know Genghis Khan? Do you know that 0.5% of every male in the world has the Genghis Khan gene? The dude had so many wives and so many children by his children until 16 million men alive today are his descendants. I don't know why I want to tell you that. I just thought that was interesting. You know, that was a bad brother. That 0.5% of all the dudes in the world belong to him. Okay, listen. Here, here's what I'm trying to tell you. You can become stay in a place so long and you become adaptive because you have a gene of adaptation. Let's go to the garden again, okay? The Bible says when they ate from the tree God told them not to eat from, their eyes were open. They realized what? They were what? Come on, say it loud out. They what? They were naked. Have you ever thought about the fact they were naked in a garden? No. They were naked with poison ivy. They were naked with rose bushes. They were naked with thorns and thistles and branches. In an agrarian environment, they were naked. You know why? Because they had an adaptive gene that allowed their skin to become some type of outer shell that could endure the elements because they could adapt to any situation. And you thought I was just still talking about them in a garden. I'm telling you, there's something inside of you that rises to the surface whenever you get in any situation that will allow you to adapt to the climate so the climate can't take you out. Hold on before you shout. That can be good and bad. Because your adaptive nature, Sherry, will make you think you're advancing when you're actually adapting. And you weren't made to just adapt. You were made to advance. Write this down in parentheses. My adaptive nature, if I'm not careful, will make me become a functional dysfunctional. You can operate in dysfunction for so long until it becomes comfortable. Anybody ever heard of a fish called the blind cavefish? Blind cavefish, guys, is a fish that's generally in Mexico. This is a very, very interesting thing. Blind cavefish started off being a regular fish, but a school of them got caught in an excavation or a cave in the deepest parts of the floor of the ocean where they had no sunlight whatsoever. And Natasha, what happened as a result of evolution, generations passed, and some of them started being born with one eye. And then others started being born with no eyes. Because what happened was they adapted to the darkness. And since they could not see where they were, they no longer had use of eyes. And so other senses begin to heighten. All I'm trying to tell you is when you're in the wrong place, your gifts not only start to be deformed, but sometimes they stop working, period. That's why you got to be in a place where your gifts can be free enough to operate so you can emerge to the highest level of genius. Now, whenever you're out of place, you're going to be deformed. Now, Elijah is at the brook. He tells him, I want you to go to Zarephath. He says, because I've commanded a widow woman there to sustain you. Write this down for the word there. There is a certain place, a certain point, and a certain position. There is a certain place, a certain point, and a certain position. There is a specific place that's been designed, that's been designated, and that's been destined by God. Did you repeat that? It's been designed, it's been designated, and it's been destined by God. Write this last thing down for there. There isn't always a permanent place. It's a progressive place. It's not always a permanent place, it's a progressive place. So here lies the question. What do you do when you know God brought you here, but you feel him pulling you over there? Here's a second question. What do you do when you leave here, get over there then becomes here, but after a period of time, here no longer feels like there? What do? You keep moving. Because life was designed to be a series of transitions that's going to constantly cause you to be augmented, that's going to constantly cause you to be challenged, because God is a God of progressive movement. God is a God of advancement, and he's always trying to make you better. And anytime you come to the place where you want to stay in one position, at that point, you have chosen to deform your purpose. So write this down. Come here, Joe. Joseph has a dream that he's going to be in charge of his whole family. Y'all remember that dream? Bible, he says he saw in a vision that his whole family bowed down to him. Here's what's interesting, Pastor Jackson. He had the dream in a place called Hebron. The place called Hebron. Hebron in the Hebrew tongue means the place of the precipice. It means you're standing looking over, but you can't get there. But then he snatched out of Hebron and put in a pit in Dothan. Dothan means the place of the two whales. Then he snatched out of Dothan, and he's taken now down by the Ishmaelites to Egypt. Egypt literally is a metaphor for world, which means a godless place. But it's in Egypt that his dream manifests that he had in Hebrew. Write this down. Your dream isn't tied to a place unless the place was a part of your dream. What that means is the dream God puts in you is always going to be portable. I'm going to say it again. Your dream isn't tied to a place unless the place was a part of your dream. Now, Elijah is figuring out what we've got to figure out. That placement will have certain elements connected to it. Write this down. Placement is always going to bring you in contact with people. Because let's be truthful here. My place wouldn't matter if I didn't have to meet certain people. If I wasn't going to be connected to certain people, I could stay in the same place. But you know why I have to go to different places? Because I got to find different people. Oh, no, I don't. I just need God. Okay, play with yourself. I promise you, God don't send what you need. He sends who you need, who has what you need. And he's always going to be, matter of fact, write this down. Whenever God wants to change your life, he sends a person in your life. And whenever the devil wants to derail your life, he sends a person in your life. So placement helps you to find the right people. Put in parentheses who you're going to be with. Because there's somebody God's going to send that knows what to do, what you're trying to, knows how to do what you're trying to do. Matter of fact, would you prophesy this with me? Say, as I sit here in real time, God is raising up a credible person who's going to use their credit to voice my credibility. And I'm going to be able to do faster what it took them to do longer because I'm going to stand on their credibility. Woo! Since you're bold enough to say that, T, say this as well, and say they will give me their resources, their time, and their talent to use for my benefit so I can get through doors that I normally would have been kept out of. That's all about placement, man. Second thing, write this down. And I think I got 3 minutes. Write this down. Placement is about performance. Because there's certain things I can't do in certain places. I'm going to use this example because I think it's just a very practical one. There's some of you that were in different ministries who had the same gifts that you're using here, but you couldn't use them there. Because you were out of place. There's nothing wrong with that ministry, nothing wrong with that leader. There was something wrong with you. Uh-oh, y'all didn't like that. Because you were out of place. But now that you're in place, you get stuff done. So performance is right in parentheses what I'm supposed to do. But then the third one is perception. I want you to do something for me. I want you to look straight ahead and tell me what you, please don't say me. Look straight ahead and tell me what you see. And just blurt it out. Okay? Now do me a favor. Turn to the side and tell me if you see what you just saw. Because perception is about placement. When you're in the wrong place, you can't see the right thing. Did you hear that? See, sitting here being taught and imparted into by me means you need to focus on me. You're in the right place, so you have the right perception. But the moment you get distracted and turn away, did you see that? So placement is about perception. But then finally, excuse me, put in parentheses what I'm seeing or what I have the ability to see. But then finally, placement is about provisional awareness. Provisional awareness, which means I've got to know how long to be in this place. Because I have to understand and have the discernment to know that this place will not always be the place I'm supposed to be in. So in parentheses, put how long I should be or how long I should do. As I close, when you're in the right place, you automatically receive a grace that's attached to the right space. And it's possible to be in your place and be void of discernment and you can't perceive it. Which is why we don't get the right results, which is why we don't receive the proper rewards, because we're out of place. 10 things quickly, I always leave you with these. It's going to help you when you leave here to get yourself to the right place. Number one, self-reflection. I need you to start making a self-assessment, man. Look at your strengths, your weaknesses, your passions, your values, and determine what's going on with you. I was talking to someone the other day who God is literally taking them somewhere higher. I said, listen, what you got to do now is put some ethics in place. What do you mean, Bishop? You got to be able to tell yourself, this is a line I won't cross. I don't care how much money they offer me. I'm not doing that. And if you don't do that down here, you'll compromise for anything up there. Am I making any sense? But then vision setting. You have to have in mind where you want to be, where you're going, and what you want to have. I say to folk all the time, whatever is not on your mind is not going to be in your future. What you're thinking about daily, what you're confessing daily, and what you're believing God for daily is important, and it needs to be defined with clarity. Stop being vague about what you want because you're too intimidated to believe you can have it. How many of you literally pray specifically enough for God to do exactly what you believe he's going to do? I said this on last night. God said to me, you got more faith in Amazon and Jeff Bezos than you do me. How is that, God? He said, because when you pray, you get up and you still worry and you still ask me again. Can you put Mark 11 on the screen? Can you put Mark 11, 23 and 24 on the screen? Can I prove it to you? Anytime you pray and you really believe God, you don't have to ask him twice. You just start thanking him for what you believe he's already done. But verily I say unto you, go to the 24th verse. 24th verse. Therefore I say unto you, what things soever ye desire when you what? Watch this verbiage. Believe that ye what? Did you see he didn't say shall? In real time, when you pray, you got to believe it's yours. And then he comes back with a conjunction of connection and says, and ye shall have them. So then that means when I believe, that's my receipt of purchase. But when I receive, that's my delivery and possession. Did you catch that? So watch this. When I have, brother, watch this. When you go to Amazon and you make your selection and you have your form of payment and you click order, be honest. How many times do you go back and check the computer over again? I wonder if I'm going to get it. I wonder if I'm going to get it. No, because when they say it's coming in 2 or 3 days, you just start getting ready to check the mailbox. Watch this, Deacon Kenny. You believe you got something coming that you can't even see. Because Bezos said he's going to deliver it. What if we started treating God like that? And start believing we receive? It changed my whole prayer life. I stopped asking stuff and I start demanding for stuff. Then number 3, this is the wrong crowd. Y'all ain't even excited. Continuous learning. Put yourself in a position where you're always learning something. How many of you read daily? If you don't, start. There are audible books out there. We have no excuse. And in your idle time, you can be listening to audible books. Number 4, mentorship and guidance. Be coachable, man. Let somebody tell you something and teach you something. Number 5, adaptability. Learn how to change and be flexible and learn how to pivot when necessary. Number 7, listen intuitively, which means God may not always speak audibly, but he will speak intuitively where you will be able to hear and feel what he's pulling you into. Is this number 8? What number is this? 7? Okay. Networking and community. Porter Gale says your network is your net worth. Get small people out of your circle and put big people there that'll challenge you. But then the last one, is this number 7 or number 8? Number 8, okay. Resilience and patience. Learn how to be patient because it won't happen overnight. You won't learn how to get from here to there overnight. Sometimes you're going to bump your head. Sometimes it's going to be a process of constantly learning and constantly evolving, but you will get there if you stay the course. We're going to pick this up next time we come together. Will you bless? Now, I want you to say this with me. Say, I decree over my life, I will find my place, I will move in my grace, and I will discern my space, and I will have sweatless victory. Give God praise if you believe that's your portion. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Any questions, comments, or concerns?